What's up? Hello. Welcome back to Fantasy Filmball with our coverage of the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival. It is currently day 0, the night before the film festival, and I am just on my way to pick up my pass, my industry pass that's gonna get me into all of the screenings. I have 50 movies planned to see. I'm gonna be telling you all about all of them right here on the channel, so make sure you stay tuned. One of my favorite things about the night before is seeing everything getting ready, getting set up. This entire street by tomorrow will be completely shut down. Overnight, there's going to be a transformation that takes this from ordinary King Street West and turns it into Festival Street. Got my pass, 3 minutes to spare. I'm ready for tomorrow. That was the Young Filmmakers Party. It always happens the night before TIFF. If you're ever going to TIFF, it is not very exclusive. You just have to remember to RSVP because it gets full. And when I say full, it was full. I mean, like, it was one of those parties where you cannot move around, you can't hear anyone. So I think my voice is going to suffer for that because I was yell talking at everyone. I had to leave a little bit early because my first screening tomorrow is at 9 a.m. So I am going to go and catch subway and get home, and I will catch you again in the morning. It is officially day 1 of TIFF. We're back on the grind, and I think a fun thing is gonna be look at me right now, and then 11 days from now, look at the last video. I feel like I'm gonna look like a different person, perhaps malnourished, sleep deprived, and 50 movies richer. So I can't wait to start this journey. I'm heading over to the Scotiabank Theater, so I'll report back right after the movie. My first movie of the festival was Steven Soderbergh's Presence. Presence is a ghost story which takes a first-person point of view. The entire film is filmed in long takes with a floating camera, which clearly represents the spirit or the presence of a ghost. As this ghost wanders, floating from room to room, this family who has just moved into this home. They're unaware that there's a spirit haunting it, but they've gone through a recent tragedy. The daughter's best friend had just passed away of an overdose very recently. And in effect, the film becomes almost like If Ordinary People was a ghost story. It's a family drama where all of them are going through something. All of them are dealing with, coping with tragedy, except it happens to be told through the perspective of a spirit. And as the film goes on, the spirit begins to interact with them more, and there's some very interesting surprises, which I will not spoil here because you want to go into this film knowing as little as possible. All you need to know is that it's the point of view of a ghost watching a family live their life. This, to me, was what I wish In a Violent Nature was earlier this year. Kind of pseudo-horror movie which flips the rules, which takes on a new perspective. Something that allows us to see the lives of what would typically be the victims of a horror movie, but through a different lens. The cinematography done by Steven Soderbergh is brilliant. It floats around delicately with this wide-angle lens, natural light, moving all over the place, capturing exactly where we need to be at any given moment. This one had my jaw on the floor through the entire climactic sequence, and it's totally one to watch out for whenever it gets near you. So I am hanging out at the Scotiabank Theater all day today, and because it's the first day of the festival, there's a lot of press and industry and not a lot of public screenings. The first public screenings happen around when opening night happens. I won't be attending that. I want to see other films today, but the first day is always jam-packed with really interesting press and industry. The great thing about press and industry screenings is I don't need a ticket to attend. I just show up, I get in line, I get a seat, and I watch the movie. No rush, But that said, today is the day that is going to feel the least like a festival, because again, I'm just hanging out in Scotiabank. So let's explore around. We have the outtakes over here, my go-to meal during the festival. When I can't get somewhere to get actual good food, I just come here. It's a step up from just eating popcorn at every meal. You know, I can get some actual sustenance. But that said, the movie theater concessions food, it wears on you, man. It wears on you by a few days in. There's 14 screens here, including Cinema 12, which is an IMAX screen. I would actually say the best IMAX screen in the Greater Toronto area. It's the biggest screen that I've seen in my entire life. It's one of my favorite places to go and see movies during the festival and outside of the festival. I don't know if I'm seeing any IMAX movies this time around, but it's always a treat. And because there's 14 screens, the cool thing with this theater through the festival is it's always screening things at all times. It is always bumping, it is always busy, there is always a movie starting, always a movie ending, which means this is always one of the liveliest venues. Anyways, I'm gonna get some work done because my next show is at 12:30, so I guess let's get to it. Stepped outside for a breath of fresh air between movies. So I just watched Daniela Forever, the new film from Nacho Vigolando. Daniela Forever is a sci-fi romance with a little bit of comedy. It tells the story of a man whose partner passed away in a car accident, and since then he's been mourning and grieving and has just been in a real depressive slump. But he finds a way out when someone tells him about an experimental medication that will allow him to lucid dream and create a dream world. He immediately starts to build a world around Daniela. But as he continues with the treatment, he ends up finding that reality and the dream world he created around Daniela are becoming more and more blurred together. The film uses a clever visual device of having almost camcorder level standard definition, early 2000s digital footage that represents reality, and a more clear HD widescreen to represent the dream world. Almost like the dream world is more real for him than reality itself. Ultimately, the film plays out a little bit like if you mixed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with elements of Inception and the general kind of humor and wackiness of Everything Ever All at Once. But despite all three of those being some of my favorite films, this one kind of just missed the mark. And largely that's because of the pacing of the movie. It starts to drag and drag and drag. The dialogue is often not clever, or it's so on the nose that it sort of stops scenes dead in their tracks. It'll be characters saying things like, "What are we doing here? What do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do?" And that just goes on and on and on. There's endless, meaningless conversation that never propels anything forward and drags the pace down like crazy. And as much as it does feel like some of those films, which are three of my favorite films of all time, those movies are my favorites because of how original they feel, how never been done before they are. This, every element of it feels like I've seen it before. And it wasn't doing anything really original or inventive enough to make me fall in love with it the same way that I have those other films. I was enjoying myself for most of the movie, but it just kept going and going and going near the end. At a certain point, I felt like, okay, I got the point, which is unfortunate because it has a great premise, and even if it isn't fully original, it could have been a lot more entertaining than it ended up being. Anyways, I'm back in, going to my third movie of the day. So I just got out of Superboys of Malegaon, which is a film from India, and it follows the story of a group of filmmakers who start making movies because they run a movie theater which is struggling to succeed. They're only playing old silent films by Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin. They love those movies. They start chopping together movies so that it's action movies, but only the good parts. When their theater is almost shut down because they're being called pirates, they decide to make a movie of their own. They end up becoming immensely successful. As these stories go, success ends up being the enemy of friendship, and this group of friends is torn apart by their newfound filmmaking success. It gets said a lot, but this is one of those love letters to cinema, a film about how making movies scrappy with your friends, not thinking about profit, that's what it's all about. It's a touching story that has an arc taking us along with these characters as they chase their filmmaking dreams and end up coming right back to where they started, making little crappy movies with their friends. Although they might not be good, what matters is that they made them together. And there's something beautiful about that. There's a lot of beautiful moments through this, almost a tearjerker. It's based on a documentary, so these are all real events. Now with that said, there are definitely some issues with the film. I think that the character arcs are not always the most well-rounded, but at its core, while there might be quite a few flaws with the film, it's touching, it's sweet. Thematically, this nailed the love letter to movies more than a lot of films do. So, my next movie, I decided not to do the opening night gala of Nutcrackers by David Gordon Green, which a lot of my friends are doing right now. Instead, I'm gonna go see the new Hong Sang-soo movie. He makes scrappy little movies, and honestly, I think it's a perfect fit to see this movie right after seeing Superboys and Malegaon, a film about lo-fi filmmaking, making movies down and dirty with your friends. Hong Sang-soo, I feel like his entire career has embodied that. So I'm actually very excited to check this out now. Just got out of Hong Sang-soo's By the Stream, like the 25th, 26th film by Korean auteur Hong Sang-soo. He is very well known for his films that are incredibly lo-fi. In fact, one of his most recent films from last year, In Water, is well known for being shot entirely out of focus. Now, By the Stream is in focus, fortunately, but it is a fittingly lo-fi, small story shot on standard definition cameras. It tells the story of a college art professor who is tasked to put together a skit for a cross-department showcase. And because of some misconduct with the director that they brought in, they have to replace him with someone else. And she brings in her uncle, who is a well-known and renowned TV actor. And the film follows them through the rehearsal process of this little play. And it just focuses on the small moments, them going out for dinners, them going out for drinks, them rehearsing this project in a way kind of similar to Drive My Car. This is a film that really relishes in and explores the small moments that go into a production. But it's not so much about the piece of theater that they're putting together as it just is about the relationships. One of those films where not much happens, and yet there's a lot of beauty to be found in it. It's very poetic in its minimalism. I've never been much of a fan of Hong Sang-soo, and if you're not a big Hong Sang-soo person, this probably won't do much to convince you. I did find the lo-fi aesthetic of it to be quite pleasing. It lets you sit in these wide shots that cover an entire scene, and something that becomes really interestingly apparent on a big screen at least is the way that the artifacts of the digital are constantly shifting and moving. And so as we're watching these sort of monotonous conversations, you can end up kind of drifting along to other parts of the screen. While I didn't fall head over heels, I think I'd say this is probably my favorite Hong Sang-soo film so far, but I'm still not fully a believer. I haven't been converted to the Church of Hong Sang-soo yet. Anyways, my next movie is in about an hour and 15 minutes. It is Cloud by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. But before then, I feel like I'm just gonna go walk down Festival Street, see the sights. I have no idea who they're waiting for. But the crowds just keep going. I'm coming up to the Substance Rush line. Very, very glad I'm not in that line. Oh my God. That said, those people are about to have like the best screening experience of their damn lives. The Substance at Midnight Madness. There's not gonna be a better screening at TIFF. I just got out of Cloud, the new Kiyoshi Kurosawa film. This is Japan's submission to the Oscars, and I'm gonna come much lower than I think everyone else is on this one. I didn't like it one bit. I'll preface it with that. Cloud is a film about an internet reseller, someone who scams people into selling them their products for very cheap, and then he resells them for 10 times the price. And he often does this for fake goods as well, so a lot of buyers feel quite burned by him too. So in general, terrible guy. And as his empire grows and grows, more and more people become very discontent with him on the internet and end up organizing a campaign to hunt him down. While the audience had wild reactions to this one, was laughing their head off for most of the movie, I just felt overall incredibly cold about the whole thing. The first maybe hour and 15 minutes to hour and a half are just this guy buying things and then reselling them and sitting in his house. To say it's a slow start is a vast understatement. This crawls along, and then about 90 minutes in, it becomes a full-on action movie, which reminded me a lot of Ben Wheatley's Free Fire, where it's just people hunting each other down in a warehouse. While a lot of people in the audience around me seem to be having the time of their lives, I found myself just a little bit tired out by the monotony of watching people pop up, shoot, pop down over and over and over. There's definitely some satisfying moments, some great thrills, but I really just found this to be off-putting, incredibly jarring, tonally. Really very little of this movie worked for me. And maybe I just don't get it. Maybe something's going over my head. I'm the odd one out here. Everyone around me seemed to love it. This is the first press screening today where there's been resounding applause, and I didn't see a single person leave during the entire film. So I am just wrong about this one, but on a personal level, this was the most disappointing film of the day, unfortunately. I am heading home. I have a little bit of editing to do to get this video out, and I have to get to sleep so that I can be back here for 7:30 a.m. tomorrow to get in line for The Brutalist. See you later. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.